guys! Thank you for clicking the video and watching us. This is our first YouTube video where we will share with you expert advice and our own opinion about children's books. I'm Carla and this is Grace. She's 2 years old and we live in the US. We are in an intercultural marriage. I'm Filipino, my husband is Korean, and as any other parent, would love to give the best to our children. And we are blessed to have friends who specialize in education and literacy and child development. And so we will be reaching out to them and ask them for their recommendations. We'd share that with you. As you can see, there are a lot of videos out there made by parents about toddler books. But today in our video, we will be interviewing an expert on language development and hear more about their insights on these toddler books. Hi friends! So today, as promised, we are calling our friend an expert about toddler books. So, Ate Selena, Ate is older sister in the Philippines, and as you know, I'm Filipino and she's a good friend of ours. So Ate Selena, can you please tell us more about yourself, your credentials, and your current work?
Sure. I am a literacy teacher educator. So that means I actually teach teachers how to teach literacy, and I've also now been teaching about ESL, or English as a second language. So I've helped teachers in that field as well.
We are so blessed to have you as a friend because not only is the friendship, but also getting that expert advice as we go through parenthood. Wait.
And sometimes unsolicited advice.
Unsolicited advice, yes, but very welcomed. So, yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about why do you always encourage us to read books and to introduce Gracie to different types of books, not just the usual Dr. Seuss books.
Yeah, and so early literacy is so important. Right now, the expectations for when kids get to school is so high. And so they really need to be exposed to literacy in the home. And part of that is exposure to new vocabulary, exposure to things like concepts of print or how books work. And all of that can be developed through reading with your child. And so I really want to make sure that it's something that you're doing to help Gracie as she develops, and to expose her to wonderful books and texts as she's growing up.
How early can parents start reading to their kids?
When the baby is in the tummy, you can start reading.
Really?
And as an infant, you can start reading. It's always about exposing your children to these texts early on as you can. They might not be able to understand everything yet, but it's really about that early exposure, right? And so with reading texts, you want to expose students or children as early as possible so that they're used to it. They might not pay attention for the whole book in the beginning, so you might want to start with very short books, start with board books. And part of that is just them exploring books, right? And how to turn the page and knowing what the title of a book is. And you'll find that as they grow older, they'll learn more and they'll become more attentive as you're reading.
What advice can you give to parents in determining what books to get? Which books to get?
I mean, there's a lot of different criteria that you can use. And so we could talk about this for hours. A couple of things that I just want to emphasize is probably knowing your child and what their interest is. So
that makes sense.
Try to find things that are interesting for them so that you can capture their attention. So that's one. Second, you also want to expose children to different genres or different types of texts. You don't want to just be reading stories all the time. You can expose them to different kinds of texts early on so that they could understand different types of text, because understanding a storybook is different from understanding an informational text, right? And oftentimes children are very interested in learning new information, but we often don't expose them to that. You can expose them to poetry right early on, right? And so that when they get to school, they are familiar with different kinds of texts and not just stories or fairy tales.
What are your thoughts between like the paper book and an iPad or electronic copies?
Mm-hmm. I don't know the latest research out there in terms of like the digital text, but when I was doing my grad studies, we had learned in class that we really shouldn't expose the students or children before 2 years old to electronic things, because it might be too much stimulation for them. So before that age, you really would probably want to do like board books or printed materials, and then use it afterwards. So there are advantages to both printed texts and digital texts. I think right now our children need to be exposed to digital text so that when they get to school, there's that expectation as well. But for children, it seems to be a lot more intuitive. So it's something that they enjoy as well.
So for this episode, you shared with us, or you recommended the sandwich swap. Just want to make sure it's seen in the screen. So tell us why you recommended this book.
The sandwich swap is actually one of my favorite stories. One of the pieces that I forgot to mention earlier when choosing books, one of my passions right now is to choose books that have diverse characters or that feature diverse topics. And I think that's something that's really needed right now with all of the sort of tensions that's going on in our society. We want to make sure that at an early age, students are exposed, or children are exposed to the differences in society, and that they value that and they recognize that as an asset. So that's what the sandwich swap brings. And it's this idea of a little girl bringing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and her best friend bringing a pita and hummus, and secretly they think that the meal of one another is disgusting, and this causes friction in their friendship. And how do they resolve that, right? And so it can teach students or children so many lessons about valuing the differences that you have with your friends, and that you don't have to be friends with people who are just like you, but it's actually great for you to expand your circle of friends to be with people who aren't like you, and that you can learn from one another and embrace those differences.
What could be good questions to ask the child at the end of reading the book? That way that can get them to think more than the story.
Yeah. I mean, for kids that are Gracie's age, we really have to make it relatable to them. So this book is about best friends. And so you could ask her, who is your best friend at daycare? What do you notice her eating? And those sorts of things. What is your favorite food? So what are some things that are happening in the story that you can bring back so that Gracie can make text to self connections, right? She can see herself in the book.
So Grace is 2 years old. This book is, what would you think would be the age range that's appropriate for this book?
For kids to read independently, definitely a lot higher, right? Like maybe first or second grade. But it's a great book as a read aloud for younger students. I think the misconception is that we have to read easy books because they might not understand it. But kids understand a lot of things and absorb a lot of information during these early years. So we can read texts like the sandwich swap that have easy enough ideas for them to understand, right? And we will be working on their listening comprehension, not necessarily their actual reading comprehension just yet.
Well, thank you so much, Ate Selena, for spending some time and for always giving us advice and encouraging us to read and to explore different things with Gracie, and for always giving Gracie the best books.
Of course, you're welcome.
Today we are going to read the Sandwich Swap. We've been reading this for some time and Gracie knows the story already, right? Do you like the story?
Yeah.
What do you like about the story?
This.
This. Who's your best friend at school?
Mommy.
Mommy. Mommy's your best friend at home. But at school, who's your best friend? Who's your best friend at school?
Muffin.
Muffin?
Yeah.
That's nice. Do you and Muffin like the same things or different things?
Everything.
Same things?
Nope.
Different things?
Yeah.
Yes, different things. But you still like each other, right?
Wait a second.
Wait a second, okay. So, this book, The Sandwich Swap, was recommended by Ate Selena, and we've been reading this to Gracie for some time. The retail price for this book, wait just a second. The retail price for this book is about $13, $10 to $13. It's lightweight. The pictures are really nice. It's so Gracie is about two and a half ish years old, and this book is okay for her. Like her attention, it kept her attention, and the pictures are big enough to grab her attention, and the paper is the usual. It's lightweight, it's nothing fancy, but I like that there's like big pictures in it. And it's also lightweight, so when you're sleeping, right, it's easy to carry it. So anyway, Gracie, would you like to read it again?
Yeah.
Yeah. It all began with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it ended with a... So please give it a try. Try out this Sandwich Swap book by Her Majesty Queen Rania Al Abdullah. It's a definite must read. Did you like the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can have more in-depth questions as the child grows older. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We will have more videos about other books that are recommended by experts. And give us your comments too about books that you think it would be good for us to look at. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching. Say bye, guys.